she's recognised, as we all do in politics, that if you bite off just that little bit more than you can chew, then the right thing to do is to extract the gobstopper, as it were, and then get on with the job.
Yes, it's a major capital letters big news story. Michael Gove is here. Good morning, Michael.
Hi, Matt. Good morning.
How are you?
Not too bad. Lovely to see you.
Are you having fun?
Well, it's been a very interesting conference. The last 24 hours, I think, for anyone who is a Times radio listener, will have been a rollercoaster ride.
You've been... We'll talk about the specifics in a moment. You've been to a lot of these party conferences over the years. Have you ever been to one which has started so disastrously?
I think it's always the case that in the first day, in the weekend going into any party conference, there's always a period of turbulence. It's a bit like landing at Hong Kong airport. You get the crosswinds, but then as the week goes on, once the plane has landed, once ministers get into their rhythm, then the tempo and the nature of things change. But I have to say, as turbulence goes, it has been a pretty hairy 24 hours.
And you've shot one of the wings off.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
You and your colleagues have forced the Chancellor into a humiliating U-turn hours before his big party conference speech.
I think I myself, when I was a minister in those distant days in the past, have had to change, adapt or drop policies, and it is always better to get ahead of things, and I think Kwasi was absolutely right to recognise, for the reasons that he stated in fairness earlier, that this was not the right tax cut, certainly not the right tax cut at this time, and that other elements of the growth plan were more important, and it was wise, I think, and right of him to make that change, to have listened, and that means that actually he can wrest back control of the agenda for the things that he really wants to talk about.
You suggested yesterday that in its form as it stood yesterday, you might not vote for it. You didn't confirm that you would vote for it. With this 45p tax rate taken out, would you now vote for the rest of the package?
Well, yeah, I think so, on the basis of everything that I know. And again, to be fair to Kwasi and to Liz, they'll have an opportunity both this week and also when Parliament returns to lay out more detail in the growth plan overall. And I think, again, in fairness to them, there were lots of good things that they announced, and some potentially interesting things, the detail of which we'll all have to analyse and scrutinise. When the debate over the 45p tax increase obscured that. So I naturally, I'm still a Conservative MP, last time I checked, and I'll check in with the Chief Whip later, and therefore I will want to support, and I think, as I say, on the basis of everything I've heard, there's lots that can be enthusiastically supported.
Why was it OK for George Osborne and the cabinet that you sat in to cut the top rate of tax from 50p to 45p at the height of austerity 10 years ago, but it's not right to cut it from 45 to 40p now?
Well, I can give you a scoop. I disagreed with that. And I remember having a discussion with David Laws, who was Lib Dem minister at the time and a friend of mine, who thought it was the right thing to do overall. I didn't, for the reasons that you mentioned. Now, of course, if you're a member of a team and you have an opportunity to express your view, but you're in a minority, you go with it, you go with the team and recognise that you've lost that internal argument and that it's important to be part of a coherent government unit. But at the time, I wasn't convinced that change was the right idea either.
You backed Rishi Sunak.
Yeah.
During the leadership contest, he repeatedly said, if you unveil a package of unfunded tax cuts, the pound will crash, the markets will get spooked, interest rates will go up. He's been completely vindicated. You've been completely vindicated. Have you told Liz Truss, I told you so?
No.
Were you tempted to?
No.
You were right, weren't you?
Well, but I've been wrong lots of times in my career. And therefore, just because on one particular issue, an important one, you find yourself in a different position from the government and the leader of your party, that doesn't entitle you to read across into other areas. So, yes, I backed Rishi. I thought his economic analysis during the leadership campaign was right. But Liz won. She won the debate and the contest. She's got the right now to govern in tune with the broad arguments that she laid out during that leadership election. And I'm not going to change my view on certain issues, but I also think that she's entitled to the time and space to make her case and to make the changes that she argued for during their campaign.
She hasn't got a mandate to do that, though, has she? This is such a departure from what you and every other Conservative MP was elected on in 2019. Where's her mandate?
Well, I think there are two things. I think you're absolutely right that we need to respect the vote in 2019. The reason why we won in 2019, the reason why Boris won that majority is because people were not only rejecting Corbyn and not only voting to get Brexit done, but there was a broad, for want of a better word, one nation vision that Boris was articulating. Levelling up, a phrase often used, often abused, was at the heart of it. I think that has to be at the heart of everything that the government does. But on top of that, we did have a leadership election during which Liz laid out a particular set of policies that she believed could build on everything that we'd already sought to achieve, and she got a mandate for those changes from the Conservative Party members.
Not from the country, she didn't.
No,
No, beyond the 57% of the very small group of people who are Conservative Party members. What you've just laid out, levelling up, was a big spending, state interventionist policy, as laid out by Boris Johnson. It was all about more hospitals, more schools, more police officers, more doctors, more nurses. She's now talking about shrinking the state.
Well, levelling up was about much more than that in a way, and it wasn't really, I'd argue, about big government. It was about smart government, and it was about interventions in order to make sure that the private sector could invest in places that have been overlooked and undervalued in the past. So yes, there was a role for government to play, but as a handmaiden to the private sector, not a replacement for it. Now, Liz, in the investment zones, the enterprise zones that she's laid out, I think is operating emphatically in that spirit. But it's also the case that events happen in politics, as we've realised over the last 24 hours, and in response to everything that's been happening in the global economy with Putin's invasion of Ukraine, then any Prime Minister, whether it was still Boris in office or Liz, or if Rishi had won, would automatically course correct in order to deal with some of those circumstances. And I think Liz is right to say that we need to have a focus on economic growth.
Rishi Sunak, though, wouldn't have announced £45 billion of unfunded tax cuts.
No.
So why do you think it's all right that she's done that?
Well, I explained yesterday where I had my concerns. Kwasi and Liz have listened, not just to me, but to lots of people. They've listened, they've made a change. I now think it's not just polite, but also a recognition of the Prime Minister's position that she has a bit of time and space now to outline at this conference and next week in Parliament how the package will work. And I think, you know, I've said my piece on one particular issue. People have said thank you in various different tones. And now I think...
Any other issues that you now have your eye on that you're not happy with?
No. I think I've got to be appropriately... I think all MPs have to be appropriately considerate and respectful of the position the PM and the Chancellor find themselves in. I've been a minister. I know how tough it can be. I know that friendly advice can sometimes... I don't know. I don't know if that was the Star Wars theme tune at that point. Yeah, I know that friendly advice can sometimes be welcome and sometimes not so welcome in its timing. So, again, you know, there may be things in the future, issues that arise where I might find myself disagreeing with the government. But on the whole, if you're an MP, you want to be in a position to be able to warn beforehand rather than being in open dispute.
So, did you support Boris Johnson when he said that benefits should rise in line with inflation?
Yeah. And
so you think that should still happen?
That would be my view, but I'm not in the box seat in number 11 at the time, but that would be my view, definitely.
And if it doesn't, would you vote against it?
I will wait to see what the whole package is, but what I don't want to do, I mean, you know, it's entirely legitimate for anyone to ask any MP, right, OK, what's your position on X, Y, Z? Things move, contexts change. My overall belief is Boris's argument was right. I would need a lot of persuading to move away from that, but I wouldn't want to prejudge an argument that was put in front of me before that argument was made, because in crises you sometimes have to do things and embrace policies that would in other circumstances be deeply unattractive. But my basic position, my starting position is, yes, Boris was right.
And how many of your colleagues do you think agree with you?
I don't know. Funnily enough, even though it's Conservative Party conference, I haven't had a chance to talk to many MPs in the course of the
There aren't many here. It's just the cabinet and you causing trouble.
Well, I think there are one or two other supportive MPs here as well.
If they do bring forward not increasing benefits in line with inflation,
yes,
it sounds like you're going to vote against it. It's just a question of whether or not you can force them into a second U-turn.
No, I wouldn't put it that way. I think I've got a preference, and
are there any circumstances in which you would vote for benefits not going up in line with inflation?
I can't predict how Liz and Kwasi will unveil and develop their package, and I don't want at this stage to anticipate, second guess, or try to backseat drive.
How bad would it be if the Conservatives didn't put up benefits in line with inflation and also embarked on a round of spending cuts?
I think it would be tough, but again, we're in a very difficult situation. Every budget is going to have to be reviewed. I think that we should look at those decisions thinking always, how are the most vulnerable in our society going to be affected? How can we protect them? That when there are chill economic winds blowing, it's those who have least who suffer most, and therefore we've got to have them first in our minds. But again, entirely legitimately, any of us can focus on one individual measure. I think the important thing is to look at the overall package when it's unveiled.
Do you think the tone of this conference has been right? Where you've seen actually Liz Truss, Kwasi Kwarteng, Jake Berry, the Conservative Party chairman, their answer to everything seems to be that people at the bottom of society who are struggling most should go and get a better job, as if they hadn't occurred to them before that was a possibility.
Well, it's not for me to infer how people will hear or interpret the comments of others. I think if we look back at the major announcement, and it should really have been perhaps the only announcement in the mini budget at that time on energy prices, that was explicitly designed in order to help everyone in society and to help most those who are most exposed to the increase in energy prices. So if you look at the biggest action, the biggest intervention that the government has made, it is in tune with that spirit.
I want to ask you about this, the buzz phrase, supply-side reform.
Yeah.
Which everyone is talking about. It's the panacea which is going to sort everything out and the economy is going to boom. And quite a lot of them cut across areas that you've been previously responsible for.
Yeah.
Planning. You had a go at doing that.
Mm.
It had to be dropped. Fracking. You were the Environment Secretary.
Yes.
Fracking didn't happen on your watch. On childcare, Liz Truss is revisiting something she tried to do when you were Education Secretary. Is any of this going to happen?
Yes. So, again, on childcare, the reason why Liz didn't prevail was because of the nature of the coalition, the arithmetic at the time.
So did you support Liz at that time?
Yes, I did. And I think that there are changes that can be made, and they will move the dial. They will enable more people to be in work, and they will also ensure that, if properly implemented, which I believe they will be, that children have a better start in life. On planning, I think there is a way to have meaningful planning reform. I think that provided there's an emphasis on the aesthetic quality of new building, provided you get infrastructure alongside the new housing, provided there's a democratic element involved, and provided you take care of the environment, you can do so.
But just on that, you tried that, and you had to drop it in the face of opposition from Conservative MPs. Why can Liz Truss achieve what Michael Gove couldn't?
Well, she's got formidably greater political skills than I have.
Not judging by this week, she hasn't.
Well, she's the Prime Minister and I'm not. She has. So I think we had to pause planning reform when my friend Rob Jenrick was, housing and levelling up minister. When I took over, we were in the process of looking at how we could still reform the planning system but take account of people's concerns. And my sense from everything that Simon Clarke is doing is that he understands that you can't bulldozer or steamroller these reforms through. You have to take people with you, not just people in the House of Commons, but people in communities where new houses are needed. And I think provided those things, beauty, infrastructure, democracy, environment, are addressed, then you can make it work.
I want to play you a clip of an election winner back in 2010, the Speaker of the Tory Party conference back then. Let's take a listen.
We should remember where we've come from. 3 defeats, 13 party conferences, 4,757 days in the wilderness. And you remember all the things they said about us? They even called us a dead parrot, that we had ceased to be. We were an ex-party. But it does turn out we were actually only resting. And here we are.
That was David Cameron speaking back
Yes.
in 2010. Lots of people I was speaking to last night in the bars and around the conference centre, all talking about their very real fear that this might be an ex-party again, that Liz Truss is 33 points behind in the polls, catastrophic personal ratings when it comes to economic competence, even before what's happened on the 45p rate. Do you worry that she's undoing all of the work that you did in opposition, sitting on the floor of the Policy Exchange, eating pizza with Danny Finkelstein and so on? Do you worry that she's undone all of that work and it is a return to the nasty party and you're heading for a terrible election defeat?
No. I think when in government, particularly when you're facing difficult circumstances, you have to adapt and change. Even during the period when David was leader of the opposition between 2005 and 2010, we had an economic crisis in 2008 that meant that we had to change. Not change our values, but from having said, let sunshine rule the day, we then had to secure a doctor's mandate to come in and to deal with the economic damage that the crash had caused. Similarly, the modernisation of the Conservative Party, its adaptation to changing circumstances, it's always an ongoing project. Boris changed the Conservative Party, changed its coalition post-Brexit in order to make sure that we were a more broadly based party, that we drew people from a wider degree of social backgrounds, that there were more people that we were representing on average and below average incomes. That was a good thing for government. Now we have a crisis all Western democracies are facing for the reasons that we all know. That requires toughness, and one thing that Liz has in spades is toughness. So, cometh the moment, cometh the style.
She's not been that tough. She's buckled in the face of you and Grant Shapps.
I think she's recognised, as we all do in politics, that if you bite off just that little bit more than you can chew, then the right thing to do is to extract the gobstopper, as it were, and then to get on with the job.
You had lots of praise heaped on you a few months ago when you wrote a piece in the Times and you said you were stepping back from frontline politics.
Yes.
How long do you give it before Liz Truss does what Boris Johnson did and Theresa May did, where they bit their tongue and had to pick up the phone and said, Michael, come back to government?
I don't think that's going to happen. And I think...
Is that because she doesn't want you or because you don't want to do it? Would you like to do it?
No, I think that things have moved on. So I'm still an MP, still part of the Conservative family. I want a Conservative Prime Minister to do well. And while I've had a disagreement with Liz and Kwasi over this, I worked with Liz in government. I like her. I want her to succeed. But I also recognise that she... now, we're both entering a phase where she needs to have her team working for her in a particular way, and I can support at a distance.
Isn't the truth that almost everything she's pursuing is completely at odds with your brand of one nation conservatism?
No.
But most of your supportive comments have basically been you're a Conservative MP and therefore you have got to support the Conservative Prime Minister.
No, I think on, for example, on childcare, on planning, I think Liz is doing the right thing. Again, so much depends on the execution. I think that the concentration on economic growth, and I think some of the other supply side changes that we've talked about are absolutely the right thing. Liz is naturally a bit more of a libertarian than I am. But you can't have a functioning and successful political party or movement without having, different instruments in the orchestra. What
instrument are you?
I'm the tuba.
Right. What instrument's Liz?
Liz is the lead violin.
Right, very good. Very good. So what will you do then? Will you stay as an MP?
Yes, my plan is to stay as an MP, do a little bit of writing and thinking, maybe even learn from master broadcasters like yourself.
Very good.
And see what I can do.
We look forward to that. Now, I want to ask you about Ibiza.
Yes.
What were you doing at an open-air nightclub with 5,000 other people?
Dancing.
To what?
Calvin Harris.
Oh, of course, this is the song when you
Yeah.
told Stig Aber what the song was and he thought you were paying him a compliment.
Yes, exactly. I think that reveals that. I think you texted me afterwards. I didn't want to reveal too much, pointing out that if only I'd been on your show, Matt, you would have known instantly who Calvin Harris was.
Calvin
Whereas
Harris was.
Stig,
Yes.
who's a bit of a centrist dad, I'm afraid, he's probably still listening to Crosby, Stills and Nash.
I think you could well be right. Now, a little bit earlier than normal, it's time for this. Yes, it's time for our hugely popular quiz. Can you get to number 10? 10 questions loosely connected to 10 cabinet jobs. The more questions you get right, the better the job you get, taking your place alongside our listeners and guests. If you make it all the way to number 10 and get that right, you'll cross the threshold to become our show's Prime Minister and, of course, get a certificate. And today's backbencher playing the quiz is an actual backbencher. It's Michael Gove. Are you ready?
Yes, Matt.
Any particular cabinet job you've got your eye on, as I always ask everyone who plays the quiz?
Nothing in particular.
Nothing
I
at the
would
moment.
say.
Right, very good. Come on then, let's
Minister without portfolio.
Minister, that's it. You only need to get one question for that. Okay, hang on. I've got the bell. Here we go. Let's do this. Let's play Can You Get to number 10.
Okay.
Question number 1 to become Minister without portfolio. Complete this well-known phrase, the boy who cried
Wolf.
is the correct answer. Question number 2 for digital culture, media and sport. Everyone knows you love Calvin Harris, but what is his nationality?
He's Scottish.
Is the correct answer. Question number 3 for environment, food and rural affairs. You performed a U-turn of your own during the lockdown, trying to decide whether which popular British foodstuff constituted a substantial meal or not.
A Scotch egg.
Scotch egg is the correct answer. Question number 4 for Transport Secretary. What was the name of Captain Hook's ship in Peter Pan?
Ooh.
Was it the Happy Wanderer or the Jolly Roger?
The Jolly Roger.
Is the correct answer. Question number 5 for Education Secretary. How many squares are there in a Sudoku puzzle?
9.
9 squares.
Yes.
No, it's 9 by 9, so it's 81.
Oh, right. Oh, sorry.
You're quite a long way off.
Yeah.
You can't even be Education Secretary anymore,
I
Michael.
know.
But you've made it to Transport Secretary. So look, here we are. Matt Chorley is pleased to approve the appointment of Michael Gove to the position of Transport Secretary. Would you like to... That's one you haven't done, isn't it?
No, I haven't. This is a great honour. Thank you, Matt, for the honour that you've done. Do I now kiss hands?
Yes, there we are. Kissing hands all round. There we are. We can see that on the camera. Look, Michael Gove. There he is. He's finally made it. A round of applause for Michael Gove, everybody. I mean, that sounded sarcastic, but there we are. Michael, I'll let you get off and start plotting. See if you can secure that U-turn on the welfare increasing in line with inflation.
Matt, thank you so much.
What's your next plan for conference?
I'll be speaking at Policy Exchange on placemaking with the leader of Stoke Council, Abby Brown. Looking forward to seeing lots of people there.
And will you be hitting it in the nightclubs of Birmingham?
No, probably not tonight. But if you're free tomorrow evening, Matt, who knows?
It's a date. Right, lovely stuff. Michael Gove, lovely to see you.